Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, we've got some new players in that we need to integrate and understand our way of working and style of play and the way we go about things. But I think we brought some pretty good blokes into the club. Some blokes that are going to add to, I think, what we already tried to start establishing towards the back end of last season. It's not been without its little bumps in the road too, a couple of injuries and people not being available for different reasons. Pitches have been an issue because of the wet weather and stuff like that. But we've had a team that are pulling in the right direction, working very hard for each other. Very united team at the moment. That'll get tested as we go along the way, and you come across a couple of defeats or some times of adversity. But a team that's in a very good mood and very spirited, and as I say, working hard for each other. Yeah, he's settling in really well. Obviously, he's very vocal. He loves taking the reins of a team and steering them around and that type of responsibility. We certainly pinpointed last year, probably our kicking game were an area of our game that we needed to improve radically if we wanted to convert some of the good stuff we were doing into offence, into more pressure and more points. That were an area that probably too patchy and inconsistent for us last year. So that'll be great. We talked to him when he came about playing in one style of footy under Darryl at Cass, and it probably might see some differences in how we do things here. So getting him used to, the changes in that, the way our game flows a little bit, and he's getting there in that. And some of the improvements in that I reckon will come during the season. I think we're at a point now where play against each other a bit in training. We've had a couple of trial games, which sometimes can always be a little bit clunky, but I think, are we the finished article now? Nope, we're absolutely not. But we're really confident that we'll evolve as we start getting people on the same page, in the contests against other teams and stuff like that. So yeah, Luke's been good. I'd also pinpoint or highlight the sort of strength and depth we got in those positions. Richie Myler could have taken the easy route out and moved clubs, but he felt he had sort of not played his best rugby for a year or two for different reasons, and really committed to us with an attitude that wherever I've got to play and whatever role I've got to fill, I'm prepared to do that. So rather it being a sort of kick in the pants for him, he viewed it as a massive challenge. I've got to say he's responded to that magnificently. Obviously, we've got Callum McLennan coming through the ranks who had a wonderful season with Featherstone too last year. So the strength and depth we've got in, those important positions. Throw in Cruz Leeman, throw in Corey Johnson, who's a strong emerging talent. We're comfortable that we've got some terrific strength and depth in those key spine playmaking areas. Consistency. Definite consistency, knowing what you get every week. Matt's a player that, again, we very much targeted. We weren't sort of hanging around waiting for the agents list to come through. Matt had another year left on his contract, but again, we felt doing the job and doing the little things and being accountable in the middle to a high, consistent level was something that we missed. We know Matt from meeting him over in Australia, and I guess from speaking to people that have coached him and played with him. There's very little fuss with Matt. He's very low maintenance as far as we go, but looks after himself in a incredibly good way, and he brings a level of consistency as you've seen for a long time in the NRL, of line speed, winning his tackles, being where he's supposed to be, doing his job basically to a high efficient level. Is he going to be very different to Trent Merrin in Trent footwork, offload, runs and stuff like that? Matty knows how to use his body in the middle, but he'll give us a high degree of consistency and I would say durability in that middle third. We didn't want to lose Trent, plain and simple. We never tried to hide away from the situation. A very personal situation. It's not for me to talk about Trent's private life on this. I think enough people know the story behind it and some of the reasons why. When the St George offer came, so he could go live at home in Wollongong and have his family supporting his girlfriend Jess, especially at a time where she's having a baby. We understood, as much as we, I think we've seen it with Rob Burr's, you know, we live and die rugby league, as we all do at times, but sometimes some things are just more important than that. You know, Trent were really happy here, played some great football for us, especially when we were under the pump a bit last year. He was the guy that for myself personally, were right behind us, right beside me, sorry, in the trenches, rallying the troops. And, you know, we wanted Matty Pryor to play alongside Trent, but at the same time, I'm quite philosophical about it. You know, we understand the situation, but I look at our squad again, and I look at the success that Leeds have had over these generations, which has been built on the homegrown players. You know, and I'll point to the fact that, you know, Mikolaj Aletsky and Tommy Holroyd, throwing Mustafa behind that, I think we've got some of the brightest young front row talents in the game. Cameron Smith's a player with sublime talent and ball playing ability. You know, Adam Cuthbert's in the last year of his contract at 35-year-old. You know, Trent's gone, we need to find our next generation of those superstars from somewhere. So, you know, creating a pathway and hopefully giving those boys an environment to thrive and a style of play that will suit their, you know, suit their talents. But adding Gailey, adding Matty Pryor and that rock solid experience around him, I think, you know, hopefully we'll bear the fruits of it for our club for a long time. So replacing Trent, we still potentially got a quota spot. We've got half a spot at the moment and a quota spot and plenty of cap. But again, I think it's my responsibility, along with Kevin, to make sure if we do bring another player in, it's the right call, the right person, the right abilities that can carry us forward over these next 2 or 3, 4 years and set us up. Yeah, we thought with a couple of choices in there. When we made Trent captain last year, Stevie were a guy that we considered at the time. You know, we may well have lent that way anyway, but Stevie had a bit of a setback and needed reoperating on, and you know, whether we got him back at the end of the year. So it made it a fairly simple choice. Trent or Stevie at the time. Stevie were unavailable, so Trent naturally stepped in. So yes, Stevie were. We felt Rhys Martin had shown terrific leadership since he joined the club, gone and captained his country too. And obviously Gailey is that type of natural player too. I think coming back off his injuries and just joining us, Gailey's enough on his plate at the moment, steering the team round and getting himself back right. So Stevie were a natural fit. You know, he's really taken on the responsibility you know, with a lot of not only pride but serious in how to improve himself as a captain and a communicator, both from a leadership perspective, empathy for his teammates, and part of our work in the off-season has been a lot culturally. Building those leadership players. You know, we've probably not got that real dominant alpha male like some teams have, but we think we've got a lot of guys like Wardy, Rhys, you know, Tommy Briscoe, Ash Hanley, I'll throw him in there, Don Crosby while he's not played. So we've got a lot of guys that can form the nucleus of, you know, we think a good group of players that can, you know, establish what should be a good but happy culture also. The assistant coach is a difficult one because, you know, I didn't agree with the job till right at the death, right at the end of the season really, and you know, we probably thought Ryan Carr might be around when we knew we were leaving Featherstone. Obviously that didn't work out, and Ryan had a job to go back to in Australia, which again we fully understood. You know, I worked with James Webster a fair while coaching at my other clubs, and James had taken the Featherstone job, and we just thought it worked really well last year, the fact that we dual reg with him, and a full-time coach coaching a part-time team, you know, gave us some options to use him in the week. So where Jones is concerned, I'm going to throw Kev, JP, Chev in this a little bit too. We felt during some of our tougher times last year, there were always a lot of talk in team meetings of previous years, 2015, 2017, even before that, and Kev used to do this and JP used to do that, and we had those strong alpha male leaders. You know, Danny Maguire and Rob Burrows would do this, and Jonesy was the guy that did this. And, you know, we felt it were important to recognise, you know, those wonderful times for the club and that terrific culture, but we needed to build our own culture. You know, those guys were gone. Those guys weren't coming back. They weren't going to be there for you in those type of situations. So we need to form our own identity, culture, leaders among the squad, nurture these, precocious young talents that we've got and get them on the right path through the careers. So we spent a fair bit of time on that, but we have surrounded ourselves with, obviously Kev's director of rugby anyway, Jonesy coming onto the coaching staff. Without me going into the details, we know what Jonesy brings as a human being. JP is going to be in and around on some of that leadership stuff. Chev's been around the club, so we have got those guys to lean on when we need to, and draw on all those, good times, tough times, times where they've stuck together. The game recently for Rob, we talked about how they had each other's back. They all turned up for each other on the day and came out of retirement and played, and we want to try and recreate some of that for ourselves too. So having them guys around that, we think can still bring a lot of that Leeds DNA to our team and understanding, while at the same time realising that, we've also got to, establish a new group of people that are going to eventually step in and do what those guys did for so many years. Yeah, probably weird is the way we'd had a big week in Spain. So from a performance perspective, we were ready for some things maybe not to work out. We'd had a big load in Spain, from the intensity, amount of running we did and amount of training we did. Also some travel thrown in there and all that. So we were ready for some things maybe not to be as they were. So from my point of view, we wanted to try and cope with that occasion with all the emotion, but focus on our performance. But that was, I just thought it was really difficult. I found that myself. I found I were in tears as they're walking out. I found on the bench, the reaction from the crowd, and once the guys got stripped on the touchline, we're asked after the game what I thought, and it was very difficult for me to remember massive chunks of our performance and what went right or wrong, which is unusual. Usually as a coach you come off and you got some real clarity about what's gone on and what went well, what you needed to fix up. But the whole sort of swirling of emotions and the reaction from the crowd and seeing all those guys get out together, it were a very unique but wonderful occasion, really. I spoke to Rob last week and we were reflecting on the day. It might be a long time before you ever see anything of that magnitude again. But great from the rugby league public. I usually watch the games on Sky and watch them from a very analytical point of view, turn the sound down and that, but I did that and then I went back and watched it with a commentary on, and I listened to the fans being interviewed. I watched the previous tries that Rob had scored and that, and you're just like, oh, it's an unbelievable occasion, this. I thought the way the public turned out and some of the comments that came from the people on the terraces just show what it meant to, what Rob's meant to them as a player and how his plight has touched so many people. Experience tells me that everybody's confident pre-season. No one's lost a game and everybody knows they can improve and all that. It's a long season. It's a tough season. We've tried to lay some foundations within ourselves to make sure that we've got resilience and we've got some staying power. And I say when we hit a bump in the road or a fork in the road, whichever way you want, we stay on the right path. As we know, every season will present some challenges. We've got some early doors with a couple of injuries that we've had in certain positions. But it's important that, as I say, we stick together and have each other's back. So, like most squads, we're excited, we're looking forward. We know it's come with some challenges. But I like to think we're on a journey from the back end of last year and we're starting to build. I've heard the word, and it's been used, transition phases, building phase and all that. I sort of disagree with that. I think we're on a little bit of a journey at the moment. We'll find out more about ourselves as the season comes. Where we're going to finish, what's his realistic goals. We haven't really talked about that. We just talked about being a united, consistent rugby league team. That when our fans see us play, they'll never going to see a lack of effort. I think that's starting to sort of shine through. We'll get some things wrong, for sure. But we want to be a team that can uphold the standards of the badge and make everybody that turns out to watch us on a weekend really proud of the efforts that we put in. Yeah, I sort of cut myself off from a little bit of that. As I say, a lot of our work is analytical rather than sort of getting the mood and the feel. But you know, I'm just a big believer that big names will and have always done our competition good. You know, it's been really tough. The market's been really tough because of, you know, because of all sorts of reasons. To get those type of players in, the marquee rule has been wonderful in allowing us to get, you know, your Gareth Widdups and your James Maloney's into our comp. You know, players that, you know, big household names that'll excite the fans, that'll inspire their teammates around them, and dare say inspire the opposition to play well against them too. So, yeah, I'd like to think that we're in I guess an exciting period, but a good regeneration phase for our game. There's probably been a lot of doom and gloom and negative press over the last couple of years, but I think that, you know, gradually we understand that, and we're trying to change that mindset and let the rules allow us to be a little bit more creative and adventurous with our rosters. You know, the key for us is always going to be producing our own, but I think when you can get players of that ilk, you know, we've used Matty Pryor as an example for us, you know, that can only help our young players, and certainly for the game as a whole, it creates, you know, a different level of excitement, you know, going into the new season.